17 years after the US invaded Afghanistan in 2001 and drove the Afghan Taliban from power, the war-ravaged country is still struggling for peace. Last week, Afghan President Ashraf Ghani offered a new ceasefire deal with the Taliban, yet no response has been received so far. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, it seems, as representatives of the Taliban agree to take part in talks in Moscow next month on the future of Afghanistan, even though the US is reported to be refusing to send delegates to these talks. So where is Afghanistan heading now on its road to peace? And with US officials reportedly preparing to review US military strategy in Afghanistan after the Trump administration failed to see major progress since 2017, how would a removal of US troops influence Afghanistan in the years to come? For more insights, I was honored to be able to talk to His Excellency, the former President of Afghanistan, Hamid Karzai, and I started by asking him about his view on Washington's Afghan strategy and whether it has set the conditions, as the US claims, to produce a safer and more secure Afghanistan.
It isn't working at all. The security situation in Afghanistan has worsened considerably, and the suffering of our people has increased considerably. It is exactly because of this that there is a lot of cry aloud in Afghanistan for change in the policy that the United States has adopted towards Afghanistan, not only the past year of President Trump, but even before that. Change for us means an end to war, an end to violence, and the return of peace. For that, the Afghan people believe there are two main responsible countries. One is the United States, the other is Pakistan.
The other is Pakistan.
Yes.
Let's imagine that the United States or the NATO pulls out their forces in Afghanistan or stop fighting, let's say. Will the security situation get better?
We don't believe the United States will leave Afghanistan. They may reduce the presence of their troops in Afghanistan. They may reduce their footprint or presence in Afghanistan. But we don't think they will leave completely. We don't think they will leave their bases in Afghanistan. But in case when they decided to leave Afghanistan completely, then it is extremely important for our region, where we have global powers as neighbors with us, meaning China as a leading world power and as a neighbor of Afghanistan, taking initiative with two other major powers in our region and globally, Russia and India, and with our most important neighbors, Pakistan and Iran, to create an environment of guarantees, two-way guarantees, from our neighbors towards Afghanistan, especially Pakistan, and from Afghanistan towards our neighbors, especially Pakistan, so Afghanistan can be stable and peaceful. If that condition is met, surely we will have peace in Afghanistan. Another possibility is that the presence of the United States in Afghanistan is seen as conducive to better development of peace in Afghanistan by our neighbors, is seen as creating or being conducive towards cooperation in Afghanistan, rather than the environment of confrontation that we have today, and that China takes as a close friend of Pakistan a leading role in trying to facilitate such an environment of Afghanistan. So under these two conditions, Afghanistan will definitely have peace, because what we have in Afghanistan today in terms of insecurity and the rise and the increase in extremism and violence and terrorism is not a product of Afghanistan. This is a product of outside politics, especially a product of the years where the United States and Pakistan and other of their allies were cooperating against the former Soviet Union, towards the defeat of which, towards the weakening of which, they used religious extremism as a tool. That tool continues to be applied in Afghanistan, and which is causing us the suffering that we have.
What have been the responsibility, however, of the Afghan governments, you yourself included, and the national unity government that has been functioning now in that regard?
Our responsibility is huge. Our responsibility is primary. That's why during my government as well, and now during the current government, there's a lot of effort towards building peace in Afghanistan. But peace in Afghanistan cannot only come by the decision of Afghans or by the effort of Afghans. Yes, in the conflict in Afghanistan, a great majority of those suffering are Afghans. There are some foreign fighters on both sides, but the great majority of people suffering are Afghans, in which, unfortunately, only an Afghan decision to end conflict will not be sufficient, will not bring peace to Afghanistan, because the fundamental, the original nature of the conflict is foreign, which is the promotion of various interests. Therefore, peace will come to us when primarily the conflict that is created by foreigners in Afghanistan is removed, and then Afghans can easily sit among themselves and do the rest of it.
Last August, US President Donald Trump announced his Afghan strategy, in which he said the United States are a partner and a friend to Afghanistan, but they will not dictate to the Afghan people how to live or how to govern their own complex society. The United States are not nation building again, they are killing terrorists. What do you think of his strategy? How come the strategy does not seem to have worked so far?
Well, I hope the first part of his statement comes true, that they will not interfere in Afghan affairs, that they will allow Afghans to make their own decisions.
From your observation,
that has not been the case so far. They have intervened in our elections. They have tried to impose a condition upon us. They have done things that we are not happy with. The reason I ran into conflict with the United States of America during my own government was precisely this: civilian casualties, entry into Afghan homes, forceful entry into Afghan homes, the creation of prisons, and an ambiguous and unclear policy that only caused the Afghans to suffer, and without end in sight. Now we hope that President Trump's policy, what he said about Afghanistan, non-interference and allowing Afghan people to decide their own, holds true and is acted upon. And on the military situation in Afghanistan, on the pursuit of a military solution to the Afghan conflict, the position is very, very clear. It has failed. It will not succeed. Therefore, the answer is not more fighting in Afghanistan. The answer is an end to fighting in Afghanistan. There was this 3-day ceasefire a month ago, which the Afghans loved. We hope that will be extended, and that is more the responsibility of the United States and Pakistan to work out.
So according to an article by the Long War Journal published in June, the US and Afghan governments have, and I quote, not beaten back the jihadists in the month since President Trump announced his new strategy last August. They have, at best, prevented them from conquering even more ground. Why would the Taliban, which is not close to being defeated, give up now? So what is the right approach to dealing with the Taliban?
That is true. The Taliban have taken more territory in the past 3 years, a lot more territory in Afghanistan. According to the BBC, they are in control of 50% and influence 70% of the country. The Taliban are part of the Afghan people. They are Afghans, just like we all are. Therefore, it is imperative. In other words, the only way forward is for the Taliban and the rest of Afghanistan to talk to one another, to come to a solution. But for that to happen, there must be there must be a confluence of interest of foreign involved parties as well. And as I mentioned earlier, the two most important foreign powers who have an interest in the conflict in Afghanistan are the United States and Pakistan for their own reasons. Pakistan for its own reasons and the United States for its own reason. Then there are other neighbors as well, like Iran, like India, like China, like Russia and others who have an interest and who can influence considerably. When this confluence of interest happens in Afghanistan, war would end. For that to happen, primarily it is the United States and Pakistan to decide to undo what they have done. The promotion of extremism together and the consequences of conflict in Afghanistan. Then Afghans and our neighbors can contribute to consider.
You have been watching a special edition of The Point with me, Lucien. We'll take a short break and we'll be back right after that. Stay with us. Welcome back, and I've been talking to His Excellency, former President of Afghanistan, Hamid Karzai. It is reported that there is some kind of engagement between the United States and the Taliban. President Ghani has said that he wants very much to involve the Taliban, but it is also reported that the Taliban actually want to bypass the Afghan government and engage directly with the United States.
Yes.
What is going on here?
Yes, the Taliban want to talk directly to the United States as a major party to conflict. The Taliban believe that the war is there in Afghanistan because the U.S. is there in Afghanistan. So in order for the war to end, the Taliban must talk directly to the U.S. and the U.S. must leave Afghanistan. That's an opinion that the Taliban have, but there is also another opinion in Afghanistan which is not exactly the same. Therefore, there has to be a dialogue between the Taliban and the United States, could be, and more importantly between the Taliban and their fellow Afghans as well. They can talk to the Afghan government, they can talk to the Afghan Peace Council, they can talk to all other Afghans. So the effort has to be a wholesome one between the Afghan people themselves in all manners good for our country, and an effort by the region and the global community.
In 2014, President Ashraf Ghani signed with the United States a bilateral security agreement to allow foreign troops to stay in the country beyond 2014. But before that, you had refused to sign that for almost a year. And that was frustrating the foreign forces, because without that agreement, they would have to start packing to go home. Yes. Why were you opposing this agreement? And what do you think of the implications now that it's signed again?
I opposed it because I did not see the signing of this bilateral security agreement to bring peace to Afghanistan or to bring stability to Afghanistan. There was no sign at all. There was no indication in the U.S. policy towards Afghanistan that would allow me to sign this. I was not against making a partnership with America. I am for partnership with the United States of America. But a partnership with the United States must also guarantee Afghanistan's interests. I did not see that guarantee there. Therefore, I did not sign it, and I thought that the presence of the bases must definitely be a guarantor for peace and stability in Afghanistan and for good relations, equitable relations with Pakistan. None of that was coming. Unfortunately, after the signing of the BSA by the new government, we saw that matters worsened in Afghanistan. There was a lot more insecurity in Afghanistan, a lot more Afghan died and suffered, a lot more of the country fell to insecurity, into lawlessness. So we have not gained at all by the presence of the U.S. bases in Afghanistan or the signing of the bilateral security agreement, which is why we are asking the United States to reconsider its policy towards Afghanistan and to make sure that the U.S. presence in Afghanistan is beneficial to Afghanistan as well, and that it brings peace to Afghanistan, which is what we primarily want.
Were you suggesting that the presence of the United States in Afghanistan was causing the security situation to go worse?
Yes.
How so? Elaborate, please.
Because their actions in Afghanistan, their bombardment of Afghan villages and homes, their harassment of the Afghan people, creating prisons in Afghanistan, and not having a clear approach towards Pakistan. One day they would tell us that the sanctuaries for terrorists and for violence was in Pakistan. The next day they would fund Pakistan. This was a contradiction. I wanted clarity on two fronts. One, that the United States would not fight in the name of fighting extremism in Afghanistan, or hurt, or bomb, or create prisons in Afghanistan. In short, I wanted the US to respect Afghanistan's sovereignty, territory, and the life of the Afghan people. Two, I wanted the US to make sure that matters with Pakistan were clear and of a nature that contributed towards peace and stability. Not more confusion, not more anarchy, and the resultant conflict in Afghanistan and between Afghanistan and Pakistan. This guarantee could not be given, and without this guarantee I would have not signed, and I didn't sign. So the US presence in Afghanistan of the bases at this point are not what we expected to bring to us. No peace and no security.
You mentioned there should be a Loya Jirga, or the Grand Council of Representatives from around Afghanistan, to decide about the current situation in the country and to bring a suitable government in place. Why have you proposed the Loya Jirga? We know the last time it was convened was in June 2002 and has never been convened ever since.
The Loya Jirga of Afghanistan is the body of the Afghan people that decides on the most important issues for the country. It's at any given time, other than direct elections or referendum, the most representative decision-making body for the Afghan people historically. I want a Loya Jirga to come to do two things. One, in which the Taliban would also participate, to decide on what the Afghan people want to do with their lives, on peace and on relations with the rest of the world, especially with regard to the United States and its presence in Afghanistan. If the Afghan people, through the decision of the Loya Jirga, in which the Taliban also participate and must participate, decide that the US bases can be in Afghanistan, but with these conditions, then welcome, the United States can stay in Afghanistan with the conditions that the Afghan people put for them and make life good for us and for themselves. But if the Afghan people decide that the US presence in Afghanistan is not conducive to peace, and that it doesn't suit our neighbors and others, and that there must be another arrangement, then the US must respect that. But fundamentally, it was to decide that it was to bring a decision of the Afghan people on issues vital to Afghanistan.
Let's talk a little bit about China's relationship with Afghanistan, where it stands now. How do you see it going in the near future, especially after this trip?
China has been a very good friend of Afghanistan and a great neighbor of Afghanistan. It has always wished us well and has proven that. It has always wished us well and has proven that, especially with the emergence of the new government in Afghanistan, with the arrival of the United States and the international community. China was very helpful in the whole process of Afghanistan getting democratic, getting sovereign, and beginning to rebuild the country. Chinese relationship was transformed from one of assistance to us only into investment and trade activity with us as well. China took great initiatives as well in enhancing bilateral strategic relationship with Afghanistan. During my government, Afghanistan and China signed the strategic declaration agreement between the two countries. We expanded relations massively. contracts were given to China for mineral resources and all that in Afghanistan. So China has a unique place. And China also tried very hard to improve relations between us and Pakistan in creating forums and meetings between us and Pakistan, and between us and the United States and Pakistan and China, the quadrilateral format of talks. So we are very happy with China-Afghanistan relations, and we also believe strongly that there is a lot of deeper scope for cooperation, and that deeper scope for cooperation is what we are seeking from China in the political arena as well, of trying to do things that will help Afghanistan stay.
Exactly. You mentioned the China-Afghanistan Pakistan Foreign Minister dialogue, which was only held last year, the first time, and then the next dialogue is expected to be held in Kabul. What do you think would have to happen, or what does China what can China do more in order for such dialogue mechanism to really bring real change on the ground?
A number of things. One, as I mentioned earlier, China has taken certain initiatives in towards bringing peace in Afghanistan, with some success. China is a very close and strategic friend of Pakistan. And Chinese words with the Pakistani government carry weight. And Chinese words with the Afghan government and the Afghan people carry weight as well. Being a great friend of Pakistan is an asset for us. China's being very friendly with Pakistan is an asset for us. We believe that that asset China can use in a way that brings good relations between us and Pakistan, and also leads to peace in Afghanistan. Second, China also is on good terms with Russia. It's a great neighbor of Russia, and Russia is a neighbor of Afghanistan. And Russia also wants to help in Afghanistan, to help bring peace to Afghanistan. China is also a neighbor of India, another great friend of Afghanistan, and China has a workable working relationship, a nice relationship with India. So China and these two other countries can put their efforts together with regard to Afghanistan, with regard to improved relations with Pakistan, and these three countries can also bring in Iran to a format in which the United States of America will also be, I hope, involved in a manner that will bring a cooperative sense to things in Afghanistan, rather than a competitive, confrontational environment in Afghanistan. That will definitely lead to peace in Afghanistan and to a better regional arrangement. So China has a critical role to play, and I'm sure it's thinking of it, and I'm sure it's going to do more of that as we move ahead.
On the economic front, China has been pushing forward a lot of development initiatives, and the Belt and Road Initiative is a very prominent
significant one. Yes.
Yeah, you have voiced your support on various occasions to this initiative. Could you elaborate a little bit more? How can this benefit Afghanistan?
Well, you see, we call Afghanistan the heart of Asia, and we call Afghanistan the crossroads of Asia. Central Asia to South Asia, South Asia to West Asia, vice versa. And China's One Belt, One Road project is exactly the same thing. Connectivity all around, in which Afghanistan will be the best beneficiary. So therefore we hope that for the purposes of economic development of China and of the whole broader region in which Afghanistan is a part, that the One Belt, One Road project will bring us the infrastructure that we need. Roads, railways, all sorts of other investments in our country. For that to happen, the fundamental is peace in Afghanistan. The fundamental is a relationship with Pakistan in which Pakistan begins to move away from the use of extremism as a tool that they have been using together in relation with Afghanistan. And we believe that China is very well placed to get this achieved, and that is what they have been trying. So yes, we are for one Belt, one Road project. Yes, Afghanistan can be an extremely important centerpiece of this whole Central Asian, West Asian arrangement. And also, yes, very much, that all of this will not happen unless peace has returned to Afghanistan. And that's what we all seek.
Finally, I would like to ask you about your future plan. Let's say Afghanistan is now gearing up for parliamentary election this summer, actually, and presidential election next year. According to your interview with Spiegel in Germany, you said that if Afghan politicians and public request you, you will join the upcoming elections. But then in another event, you also refused. So exactly what is the plan? According to the Constitution, you cannot run again.
Yes. The Spiegel magazine kept asking me and saying that there is a growing opinion in Afghanistan that you must return. I said no, I don't want, because the Constitution does not allow it, and I have done my time. But then the question was, what if there is a need? What if there is absolutely a need and a great segment of the Afghan people call upon you to return? To that, my answer was, well, if that situation comes, I hope it will not come. If that situation comes where my services for building peace and harmony in Afghanistan are required, as an Afghan national, as a country invested in Afghanistan where my children live, of course I would not say no. But not in the elections. I would not stand for the elections, no.
So in some other capacity?
In some other capacity where I can help Afghanistan come back to peace and stability and strengthen our national unity and bring the Afghan people all together again, as we did during my government. To that is my national duty, and that I will always do.
Are you talking about the elections in 2019 or slightly further down?
Not in the election. I will not be a candidate in the elections, no.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm willing to help Afghanistan in any other form towards stability and well-being and unity of the people.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, former President of Afghanistan, Hamid Karzai. And that's all for this edition of The Point with me, Li Xin. As always, follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called CGTN to watch the show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. You've got The Point.